Get ready for the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, your weekly stop off for everything District 4 athletics in the state of Idaho. My name is Brandon Baney, and today I'm joined by a guy who is fat and happy-ish, Scott Burton. Scotty, what's up?
Dude, I tell you what, man, I don't know how the holidays treat everybody else, but you're like a dang Hoover vacuum when you get in the kitchen, right? And then next thing you know, you've got butt implants on the couch. And then the only time you move is either to go to the bathroom or to put more food down your gullet. And then today's the first day back from work, and I am feeling it. Holy cow. And I'll tell you, I think I probably need to reevaluate myself just a little bit. But holy cow, I should have put pH fat, at least give myself a little bit of confidence.
Well, there's no better time than the start of the new year to get those workout goals back in action. Little pro tip for everybody out there that's doing the New Year's resolution thing: give it about 2 weeks, and then everybody that crowds the gym, that'll peter out. And then
you know what? And the funny thing is, Brandon, I built my own gym in my garage. I have no excuse whatsoever, none. But you would be impressed with the conversation I had today with somebody about this very topic. And the way that it ended was, well, today's Wednesday. You don't start stuff on Wednesday. You start on a Monday, right? So it's kind of one of those things. I'll stop procrastinating tomorrow. Yeah. So next Monday, we're going to reevaluate and maybe just go, well, you know what? It's still early January. It's still cold. I'm still layered. I'm not like wearing short sleeves yet.
Right. Yeah.
I'll find whatever, and then I'll just wander off to the kitchen and see what I can find.
Yeah. The holidays treated me pretty well. Also, Scott, I was like you, pretty vacuumish, just devouring everything left and right. I will say that, Thanksgiving is kind of the other big eating holiday, right? And it's literally a month before Christmas. I did not have much at Thanksgiving this year because I got the flu. My older brother, who claimed he wasn't sick, was sick and got everybody in the family sick. And I couldn't eat anything for, about a week and a half. I really didn't eat much. So I kind of skipped Thanksgiving this year. So I doubled down on Christmas. Does that make it okay, Scott?
You know what? It makes it a little bit better. The difference between Thanksgiving and Christmas is Thanksgiving usually is just one day, maybe a day of leftovers, but you're not gorging yourself like for 2 weeks that you do for Christmas. And I mean, I swear it is the July 4th hot dog eating contest for like 14 straight days. And by the time you're done, you're just like, holy crap, what have I done to myself? I have just caused so much damage that it's going to take a lot more than one silly New Year's resolution. It's going to take a lot of resolutions to fix what I have just caused. And that's kind of how I feel.
That's right. Well, just remember, everybody out there, when you've got that finger pointed at someone else, there's 3 more pointing right back at you. So
that is so true. So the next time you see me, I will either be on some sort of breathing apparatus because my diaphragm cannot move what I have packed onto it, or I will be in like a headband jogging in place while we do our podcast. It's going to be one or the other.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm excited to see what kind of 80s aerobics gear you've got in the closet that you could break out for the Prepcast next week.
Well, I did makeup last week. Last time around, nothing's going to stop me from doing a little bit of a Olivia Newton-John, let's get physical type stuff.
That's right. Well, if you want to see Scott physically, you can tune in, of course, to the IdahoSports.com Magic Valley Prepcast on our Facebook page or YouTube channel each and every week here on IdahoSports.com. Although I will admit we're in Facebook jail right now, Scott. Our account got hacked actually by somebody. And so Facebook has totally shut down our page as we're recording this, but we are in the process of appealing to get our page back. So
really,
if you know Mark Zuckerberg, maybe do a favor for us, Scott.
Well, usually the Facebook jail is because of something I said or Paul. We kind of think along the same lines, and they're not in line with Mr. Zuckerberg. So I thought maybe one of us said something. But
no, we had some friends from Indonesia or somewhere that decided to take over our accounts for the day, and that didn't end up too well. So anyways, this week video only on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, normally on the Facebook page as well. Audio only version of this podcast as well at IdahoSports.com or wherever you download your podcasts. All right, so we gorged ourselves on delicious food during the Christmas holiday. We also gorged ourselves on some pretty incredible basketball. There was a lot of holiday tournaments in that week between Christmas and New Year's. We had the Timberline tournament co-hosted by Bora and Timberline. You know, we saw Minico's girls go over there and compete. Parma hosted a little holiday tournament that Gooding was at and competing at. We had the East Idaho Holiday Shootout. That was hosted by 4 different schools in East Idaho. Skyline, Idaho Falls, Bonneville, and Rigby all stepped up and hosted that together. Mm-hmm. We had Mountain Home and Burley both make the trip over on the boys' side. And so there was some good holiday action across the board. But to me, the biggest story in terms of Magic Valley and the team that had the most success was the Carey boys. They went to the truckstop.com tournament in New Plymouth and won 3 games. And they just, each game they played in the opening round, and then they won a semifinal and then the championship over Water Springs. And they just looked more and more impressive to me as the tournament went on, Scott.
Yeah, no, it was definitely an impressive showing by Carey at the truckstop.com bowl. That's what it sounds like. Sounds right. Like a bowl, right?
Real quick, did you see there's all these different college bowls that happen? Did you see there's like the Cheez-It Bowl, and the winning coach got Cheez-Its dumped on him instead of Gatorade after the game?
Yeah, there was actually a couple of Cheez-It Bowls. And so that has been a big thing. And, you know, they've been really kind of pumping up what they're doing with those Cheez-Its, you know, doing slides through them. One coach just reached down and grabbed a handful and chucked them in his mouth, and off he went. But it's been a nice, fun thing with the Cheez-Its. That is one thing in these bowl things that's gotten a lot of attention, but a lot of, you know, fun, positive attention. But yes, I did see that.
Yeah, I got no problem being dumped on by Cheez-Its, but then on the other end, they had the Duke's Mayo Bowl in Charlotte, North Carolina. I cannot stand mayonnaise, so I would be not, because the winning coach gets mayo dumped on him after the game.
I wouldn't like mayo that way, but I mean, my gosh, it's mayo. It's distant second to bacon, but mayo you put on a lot of stuff, and I'll tell you, one of the best things you can do with mayo is, when I make my scrambled egg sandwiches every once in a while, toast up my bread, not butter, it's mayo on each slice of bread. And then I put the scrambled eggs in the middle, and that's an egg sandwich. And that's probably why I am fat and happyish right now.
Oh, I was going to say, that sounds horrifying.
Follow me for more recipes, Brandon. I've got them.
We should do a little holiday cooking show next year during the holidays.
Goodness,
we'll make our favorite dishes. But yeah, I can't stand mayo, so that leave me out of that. No way. No how. Okay, so anyways, back to the truckstop.com tournament in New Plymouth. The Carey boys go 3-0. They're now 12-1 on the season. And again, very impressive showing.
Yeah, no, they did it with defense, you know, and that's one of the things that you like to see is a team get better defensively as they go on throughout their season. I mean, if you follow basketball at all, you know that defense is the one thing that travels. It's the constant in winning, because offensively, you're going to have off nights. That's a given. Defensively, you cannot have off nights. That's why it travels, you know? And so it was good to see Carey do it. And that's one of the first things that, you know, they told me was that, you know, our defense was amazing. In fact, against Liberty Charter, they were down 1 with about 20 seconds to go. And their defense caused Liberty Charter to burn their final timeout. And then they got the turnover and then scored with a few seconds left with about 3 seconds to go. And then Liberty Charter chucked up a half-court shot, just about went in. But that's how they got through the first one. And then, you know, then the defense carried over to Saturday for them, where they had several shot clock violations, because this was a tournament that had the shot clock in it, right? And so their defense caused several shot clock violations. And, and we've had conversations about the shot clock, but I guess that's one thing you can measure your defense by too, is how many shot clock violations do you get, and that's something that we've not hit on, that could be a measuring stick for defense in regards to a shot clock. But anyway, that was something that they did. And, they were up 35-17 at halftime and rolled. And they had 3 players on the all-tournament team. Carson Perks was the MVP of the tournament, actually. Had 87 points and 48 rebounds in those 3 games. And holy cow, it was great. Connor Simpson and Colton Larna were the other 2 that made the team, all-tournament team as well. And, they were lockdown defenders, for Carey. And this is the 3rd time the Panthers have won this particular tournament. So it's good for them to get out and see these new teams that they don't get to see in the regular tournament, yet they continue to have success at this tournament and play well.
Yeah, Carey is now 7-2 on the season. Their only 2 losses came way back in the first weekend of competition to Wood River at the Carey Holiday Tournament, and that is a 1A D1 punching up to the 4A level. And they only lost. Close. Yeah, they only lost that game 66-59. That's a 7-point difference. And Wood River is a fantastic basketball team. I think that's a topic we will have to visit at some point this year, is how great Wood River has been playing. They're really good this year. And then their only other loss came by 2 to Richfield. And I know Richfield really, we talk about Richfield and Carey being right there and playing each other. The rivalry is already there, but Carson Perks, that guy you mentioned that won the tournament, he used to be at Richfield, and he was actually the conference MVP as an underclassman at Richfield, moved into Carey, and now, is the bad guy for the Tigers. I mean, they still like him and everything, but so those are Carey's 2 losses, and it's a phenomenal overall record.
Yeah, no question about it. This is a very, very strong Carey team that is in a gauntlet of a conference. We talk about this conference all the time. I mean, you've got 6 teams in that conference of 10 at 500 or better, and they haven't even started conference play yet. In fact, it kicks off tonight, where you have 7-1 Lighthouse taking on 7-2 Carey. I mean, it starts tonight, and then they're going to start to separate themselves, because, Carey is sitting right there with Lighthouse at the top of this conference. 7-2, Lighthouse 7-1, Valley 6-1, Glens Ferry 6-4, Castleford 5-3, Murtaugh 3-3, and then everybody else is just kind of whittles their way down from there. But that's 6 teams that are 500 or better, and conference play in this conference hasn't even started yet. So I'm really interested to see how this shakes out too, because there's some pretty good teams there, and Carey's one of them.
Yeah, when you look at Carey's stats, I mean, we talked about Carson Perks. I mean, he is averaging, Scott, right now, he is averaging a double-double on a nightly basis. He's averaging 26.7 points per game. That's got to be near the top, and in terms of statewide. And he's averaging 13.9 rebounds per game. That's unheard of.
26 and 13 line, which is absolutely amazing. And you look at, what he did this past weekend, it's right along the same thing. He averaged 29 points to go along with 16 rebounds. So he goes to this tournament and does even better, a 29-16 line on average. I mean, that's incredible. And that means you're doing a whole lot for your basketball team. And I think the impressive thing are the rebounds. I mean, there's people that can score, and they're going to get theirs, but are they going to get in there and they're going to mix things up? Are they going to fight for those rebounds? Are they going to be around the rim all the time? Well, this Perks kid is, he can score with his back to the basket. He can score with his front to the basket. But he's also doing those other intangibles that his team needs him to do, and that's rebound the basketball.
Yeah, so opponents might be looking at it going, okay, hey, if we stop Carson Perks, we got a good chance to win. And, fans might look and go, well, Carey's a one-man show, right? It's Perks, obviously, nearly 27 points per game. That's not necessarily true. Yeah, there's a big drop off between Perks and the next guy in terms of points per game, but the next 6 players for Carey, Scott, all average between 4 and 8 points per game. So that to me says it's pretty good balance. It's Owen Park, Connor Simpson, Preston Wood, Colton Larna, and Chris Camino, and then Riley Morey. They're all right there between 4 and 8 points per game. That's really good balance.
Well, one thing that Carey has is they just have athletes, and athletes find a way. Sometimes as a coach, I would rather have an athlete and a competitor than a basketball player, if that makes any sense, because when things get going tough and you need somebody to do something uncomfortable or be in a role they're not used to, the athletes and competitors are the ones that step up and get it done, most of the time. And I think Carey is just that way. I mean, you look at these kids, we're saying the same names over and over again. Every time we talk sports at Carey, football, basketball, tiddlywinks, it doesn't matter. It's the same kids, and that tells you that they're athletes. And those are the kids that I'd like to have on my team.
Yeah. So like you said, it all starts tonight. We're recording this on Wednesday, January 4th. They take on Lighthouse Christian. And by the way, Carey played last night as well. They won 60-52 over Camas County, which we think is a really good 1A D2 team. So the wins just keep on coming for the Panthers. And this is the stretch where they're going to be tested the most, I think. You've got Lighthouse tonight, and then next Thursday at Oakley. Those are going to be 2 real big measuring stick type games for Carey. We'll see. But
yeah, it will. I mean, this is where you start to separate yourself a little bit in the conference and flex a little muscle because, like we talk about, they can't take everybody from this conference to the tournament. So you better win these conference games. And tonight for Carey and Lighthouse, for that matter, is huge.
Definitely. And one last note on Carey, you mentioned they beat Liberty Charter 51-50, really tight game at the truck stop tournament. Liberty Charter is kind of the top team in 1A D1 hoops from District 3. So that's Carey going against basically, Boise's best, District 3's best in Liberty Charter and earning a hard-fought win. So that's another kind of measuring stick that Carey and the other teams in this conference in District 4 can use to say that, hey, yeah, we can go compete with the guys from District 3, no problem at state. So that's a good measuring stick for Carey as well. You mentioned the shot clock thing, Scott. I know we're not going to talk about the shot clock every week, but I was at a game just before Christmas. Bishop Kelly was playing Post Falls, and the officials stopped the game. It had to have been 4 or 5 different times because the shot clock, wasn't being reset. And so it was only the second home game of the year for Post Falls, even though it was pretty late into December. And so you get that. There's some growing pains for sure. But yeah, it's something that the schools that did implement it this year are going to be a little bit ahead of it's going to be a little smoother next year as opposed to the schools that are doing it for the first time next year.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there are going to be some growing pains with this. And that was one of the things that a lot of the commissioners in basketball were worried about was how was it going to interrupt the flow of a game? Because that is essentially another timeout that stops momentum. And depending on how that works and where it happens in a ball game, I mean, that could swing some potential momentum and stuff in a ball game, So we're going to see it next year. You bet we're going to see it all over the place, and people are going to start kind of voicing their opinion about it, and it's all going to be based on the malfunctions, on the restarts. That is what's going to cause the problem. I think the shot clock itself, if it worked properly the entire time, I don't think people are going to complain too much about it, but it's the intangibles that are really going to screw it up. The human error, forget to do it because now you got to train somebody. What about an equipment malfunction? I mean, those things are what's going to cause people to hate the shot clock. I don't think it's the concept of it.
Right. Anyway, and we'll get through it. I mean, just like everything, any other
we'll
change that comes in, and yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
We'll get through it.
All right. Well, let's shift from hoops to wrestling. This is a huge weekend in the state of Idaho. You've got, to me, the premier regular season tournament, the Raleigh Lane Invite. It's always held at the Idaho Center. Columbia High hosts it every year, and they do a fantastic job of putting on the tournament. Minico is among the teams that are going over to compete at the Raleigh Lane. And then in the Magic Valley, you also have the Buell Invite. And this has kind of been the premier, tournament for Class 3A teams, right? That's what Buell is. They're a 3A school, to the point that South Fremont has been the juggernaut of 3A wrestling for a couple of years now. And originally they were going to go to Raleigh Lane, and they decided to pivot and go to Buell instead this weekend, knowing that the best 3A teams will be competing in Buell. American Falls, Snake River, Buell, all going to be in Buell. So for South Fremont, they said, well, going to Raleigh Lane is nice, but to us, it's more important to win the 3A state championship in a couple months. And so what better way to see where we're at than go wrestle the other 3A schools? So that makes sense to me. And that's going to lead us into our next topic, which is Jerome, the school you're at, Scott, one of the highest ranked 4A teams in the state. In our weekly wrestling team polls we do, they're second or third, just behind Minico, but it's Minico and Jerome right there at the top. And Jerome just won a state championship not too long ago. But Jerome's not going to either one of those tournaments. They're not going to Raleigh Lane. They're not going to the Buell Invite. Instead, they're going to do a little mini quad with all 4A teams.
Yeah, we're going to Disneyland instead. So we're not going to be at Raleigh Lane, and we're not going to be over in Buell. We are going to run a little quad up in Caldwell on Thursday with Lakeland and Caldwell and Jerome and Minico. And so it's going to be a nice little, little quad for us. And, and we've been asked a lot. Why are you not going to Raleigh Lane? And well, the answer is, it's a little complicated, but the simple version of it is that tournament right there would be good for about 2 or 3 of our guys right now. We came into this season with some really good returners, but we have 4 kids who placed at state last year done for the year with injuries and whatnot. So we just lost a huge chunk. We didn't even start with them of our returning guys that were state placers. And so this year, for at least Jerome anyway, is let's get these kids some confidence at some of these tournaments that aren't so big and daunting and overwhelming where they're just going to absolutely get drilled. And so that's why this one for us this year just wasn't in the cards. And so we got together with Caldwell and put this little quad together, which will be a little bit more beneficial for us, because right now we're trying to get our second and third guys in that weight class to step up. And we just didn't feel that throwing them to the wolves in something like Raleigh Lane was going to be beneficial for them. So we got to gradually bring some of these kids along, and they have done very, very well for us so far. Obviously with the number 2 ranking in the state shows a lot of what our program's doing, but Minico's 1, we're 2, Canyon Ridge is 4. And those are 3 Great Basin Conference teams. And then you got Buell, the number 2 ranked 3A team. I tell you what, the wrestling quality in this valley alone is absolutely insane. I've never seen anything like it. We have so many good wrestling teams in this area. It's incredible. When you look back, you look back to the youth wrestling that's going on here. This thing is popping down here. Whether it's the Idaho wrestling, the USA Idaho wrestling, which is going on across the state. But Idaho wrestling right now in the state of Idaho is good as I think it's ever been. This is truly a heyday for wrestling in Idaho, and factor in what we're doing with the girls programs on the side of things. Wrestling is on fire right now throughout the state of Idaho, and it's pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, wrestling, one of the fastest growing sports nationwide. Girls wrestling is the fastest growing sport nationwide. When Raleigh Lane, which is obviously the coach the tournament's named after, he passed away a couple of years ago, coaching icon. He came from coaching stints in Colorado and New Mexico. And when he got to Idaho in the mid-70s, nobody cared about wrestling. Boxing was the more popular sport in terms of combat and getting close with other competitors. And because of what he and others did in the 70s and 80s, it put wrestling on this trajectory to where now, nobody even talks about boxing anymore. I did see a pretty cool story on KMVT though, about a Twin Falls boxer that's made the U.S. national team or whatever. She's 28, 29, something like that. So it's been a while since she's been in school, but overall wrestling far outpaces boxing now in terms of popularity of the sport. And so it's because of pioneers like Raleigh Lane that wrestling has really taken off. And so I like the idea of what Jerome's doing here, because at Raleigh Lane, you can be done pretty quickly, right? This is the creme de la creme. And so if you are a wrestler that's not as skilled or experienced as some of the big juggernauts that are going to be there, your day can be over pretty quickly. And so I kind of like the idea of Jerome saying, let's get more, quantity versus quality, and not that the quad they're going to be at isn't quality, but just let's get more matches and a better opportunity for our guys.
Yeah. And, and if we could take 3 or 4 of our guys that would benefit from that and take them there and then take the others somewhere else, then, we'd do that, but it's just not feasible, so that's why we're doing what we're doing. And the explosion of wrestling, like you said, has been amazing. It's like everybody's watching Vision Quest all of a sudden and jacked about wrestling. And I'm jacked about wrestling. And I was a guy that was I don't want to say I was anti-wrestling. I was forced to wrestle when I was in middle school because basketball season and wrestling season in middle school were separate. You had to do both. Well, you didn't have to, but my coaches were like, you're doing both. And I hated every second of it. And so I kind of went on this anti-wrestling thing when I hit high school, thankfully, because basketball and wrestling were at the same time. And so I never grew to appreciate wrestling until my later years in high school, when I started to have some friends that were wrestlers, and I'd go hang out with them and watch them wrestle and realize that, holy cow, these guys are animals. And the shape that you got to be in to do something like that, I have fallen on the floor wrapped up in a blanket and tried to get out of that and about killed myself. And I can't imagine being in those close quarters, the endurance and stamina that you've got to go through. So I have a huge appreciation for what these athletes are doing. But on the other side of that is the stuff that I love to talk about. And that's the mental side of wrestling too, because you've got nobody to point a finger at but you, and you are the only one that's going to get in your own head and tell yourself whether or not you're going to be good or not. And so I love the mental side of things, because you see these physical specimen wrestlers that don't have the mental side and they go down. But then you see the tough guys that may not have the physical ability, but my goodness, are they tough upstairs. And that's what I love about wrestling, and I've really come to appreciate. And I'm glad to see it booming like it is. I really am.
Yeah. We have our standalone wrestling podcast we do every week, the Matt Chat Prepcast. On IdahoSports.com. We did it live last night on Tuesday night. I was able to get it under the radar on Facebook until they, locked us out of our account. So it was on Facebook last night. You can go back and look at that.
I did watch it today. Very good job.
Yeah. So, okay. So I wanted to ask you, this is kind of an impromptu question. We didn't really talk about this in our planning for the show, but the question came up last night, and it came from, a couple of fans, but, a Buell fan in particular was on one particular side of this. But the question was raised, this weekend, some of Idaho's best individual wrestlers aren't going to be at Raleigh Lane. They're going to be at this Doc B. It's a national tournament where the best of the best come, and compete. Mac Mauger is a great wrestler from Blackfoot. He's already committed to Missouri. He's only a junior, so he's still got a senior year ahead of him next year. But he's not going to Raleigh Lane with the rest of his teammates. He's going to this national tournament. And the question was raised, how do you feel about individuals leaving their teams to go to these prestigious national tournaments? And I think most of us at IdahoSports.com were okay with it, because if that raises the profile of Idaho nationwide, that's going to lift everybody in Idaho, where the spotlight gets shown a little brighter on the state of Idaho. But there were some fans that said, you can do that in the off season. You can do that during the summer and during the spring, and in season, stick with your team and represent your hometown. But I was just curious where you fell on that.
And it's a really interesting argument too, because you do get that mindset that it's going to be team above everything, no matter what, no matter the sport, no matter the circumstance, you're going to get that. And for the most part, I'm all about team. I'm all about camaraderie and brotherhood and all that kind of stuff. However, I do think that it is sport to sport as well, because if you were to take my quarterback off my football team and he goes here and my other team, the rest of them go here, no, that's not acceptable. You take my point guard and you send him this way and the rest of the team goes this. No, that is not acceptable. Wrestling might be a little different animal in that respect too, because you are getting team points, but you're going to have an opportunity for one of your teammates to go better himself and not necessarily, it's going to hurt the team, but it's not like taking your quarterback or point guard, right? Everybody else is going to have a chance to get better. Whereas if you take your quarterback away, everybody suffers because nobody's throwing the receivers the football. Nobody's leading the way. Wrestling, like we just got done talking about, you are the only one. So you go get it done, right? Let him go do his thing to make your team better down the road when it counts. And plus, like you said, there's the other intangible. Maybe that's going to bring a little bit of spotlight and recognition to some of our Idaho athletes, because there always are going to be those athletes in Idaho, little tiny Idaho, where we don't get that recognition, that there are going to be some athletes that are just better and they need that exposure, and it's not commonplace as it is in some other heavily populated states, but every once in a while you get it, let them go do it. And I have no problem with it.
Yeah. I was trying to think, the only other sports where I've seen that happen is like maybe track and field or cross country. If there's a regional meet somewhere, a couple of athletes might go do that on a weekend instead of going to whatever Idaho meet that we're going to go to. But
and if they're going, if they're leaving their team at the district tournament or the state tournament, that's something completely different. No, don't do that. But this is in the regular season, I don't think the goal of anybody going to the Raleigh Lane, they would all love to win it, but they just want to get better. And that's what it's about. And if your goal is to get better and be ready for district and state, then let him go get what he needs to make himself better, which in turn is going to make your team better. So again, no issue with that.
Yeah, I think we're on the same side here for sure. Okay, one last thing, and then we'll get out of here. You just mentioned, small, tiny Idaho being put on the national map. I gotta bring up Colston Loveland, former Gooding Senator, current Michigan Wolverine, and boy, I'll tell you, did you watch Michigan's semifinal game against TCU on New Year's?
I did. I watched and watched Colston against Ohio State. Obviously, anybody that's a football fan in Idaho is a closet Michigan fan as well, just because of the Idaho tie. And it's so fun to watch that kid be an integral part of that team. But, I think and I know you can respect this too, is that I love to hear what people say about him, especially broadcasters, and the way that they talk about this kid is really flattering. He belongs there, and it's hard to pick a guy out of little Idaho and put him in the Big Ten and make him a stud as a freshman. You just don't hear about that every day. And so it was so fun to follow his journey through his first year and watch him grow and just own the field like he's been there. Not act and play like a freshman, but make plays. And the cool thing about what I saw with Colston was the fact that they threw to him a lot, but the way they used him, on a lot of, blocking schemes by bringing him inside to either, take out the linebacker or get to the next level and kind of lead the way by taking out a safety, whatever, it doesn't matter. But the way they used him was impressive because that shows his versatility. And man, I was so excited for his success this year. That was so much fun to see.
Yeah, he was used as an inline blocker. And then on one play in particular, I noticed because Michigan threw a pick on the play, but Colston was the the furthest wide receiver out in the formation on the right side of the field. He was the wide guy, and they were running basically a pick for him to come on a slant across the middle, and got kind of jammed up, and then McCarthy overthrew him. But it's really cool. And you talked about the broadcasters, what Sean McDonough from ESPN is saying about Colston Loveland, a little behind the scenes for the fans. Scott, you and I know this as broadcasters, but when you go into a game, you kind of plan out, okay, here's, 7, 8, 9, 10 different storylines, big storylines that we could talk about over the course of the game. And you plan out, what those storylines are going to be. But the thing is that we do, 95, we do all this prep and we use about 10% of it during the game because there's not enough time to weave in every story. So I noticed at one point, it was like midway through the second quarter and the play had gotten over, and they actually took time to talk about, hey, this is Colston Loveland. He's a true freshman tight end from Gooding, Idaho, small town. Jim Harbaugh came out to visit him and did a workout with him at the school. Like, they took the time on a broadcast where they could have talked about 50 different players. They took the time to talk about Colston in that moment. And that to me showed that this is making an impact, because not every player is going to get their story told over the course of a broadcast, but Colston happened to in the biggest game.
No, and I think that's a fantastic point too, because they could have talked about anybody on that team. They chose Colston to talk about. Now, whether that's the small town story line from Gooding to Ann Arbor, whatever, whatever it is, they wouldn't do it unless they felt that this kid was going to be something. And, if he continues down this path, he is going to be a big time college football player, and wouldn't be a bit surprised if we see him at the next level, if he continues the growth that he's having. Obviously, there's a lot that has to happen between now and then, but right now, boy, what a great first year for the kid.
Yeah, we're so proud of Colston Loveland and all of our Idaho athletes that are doing great things at the college level. That was just front of mind because he just played in a New Year's Eve bowl game. So, all right, well, that'll do it for the first Magic Valley Prepcast of 2023. Scott, we're off and running here in the new year.
Yes, we are. Boy, we are. You know what? The camera adds about 10 pounds. I just noticed. I'm looking. See, I always look away because I've got my screen right here that kind of gives me the bigger picture. I've got the camera I'm looking at here, and I'm looking at that going, oh my gosh. Yeah. Monday it is. We're starting. I don't know what Monday it is, but Monday we're starting.
It's going to be a Monday. Off and running, the key word there, running. So
off and lollygagging, off and meandering, sashaying perhaps. I don't know. There's going to be a lot of running to start with.
Right, for sure. Well, thanks to everybody for tuning into the Magic Valley Prepcast. Enjoy the competitions this week and this weekend, and we'll see you back here next time for another edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.